Economies suck in D&D, and more than that, I sucked at running them for a really long time. They're finicky, there's no really clear rules in the handbook, and honestly, it almost feels like an afterthought, and it definitely was for me for a very long time. Let's start out by drawing a picture. You're a young DM who just got into college as a freshman, and you joined the gaming club, and now you're ready to run your first college campaign. You're so excited, you feel like you've honed your skills for the last 4 years, running 3 campaigns through high school. You've read the rule books cover to cover, and honestly, you feel like you know just about everything in the game. Now, you sit down and watch this new anime that's about a dungeon crawl, and you get excited because you really want to run your first ever dungeon crawl, and you think it's just gonna be great. The players are gonna go down in this nitty-gritty dungeon, they're gonna slay monsters, and it's gonna be an epic adventure of leveling up and heroism. You invite your friends, and you think you have a strong grip on your mechanics and on the game mechanics, and you say that there is no way they can break your campaign, and it's going to be a great time, and everyone's going to have fun. First mistake, never challenge your players. But now we sit down for the first session, and you have your 100 floor map finished. You've spent hours, days, weeks working on this map, and you're so excited to run it. Your players are getting through the first floor. They've passed all of the traps. They've killed all the monsters, and you're preparing for them to move to the second floor, and then all of a sudden someone says, I want to go back to the first floor. Well, you think to yourself, why? And that's when your players start grabbing all of the chests, all the monster loots. They head up and they sell absolutely everything, and then they go back into the dungeon and they repeat. Poison, traps, tooths, even the chests themselves that weren't bolted to the floor came up to the shops, and everything got sold. And after about 20 times of this happening, the players now have just loads and loads of gold because D&D wasn't really made to kind of combat this mass sailing of respawning dungeons. And that's when you realize there may be a flaw in your plan. Well, to be honest, that DM was me. That was my first experience running a campaign in college, and I learned a lot since, but one of the biggest things I've learned is there's some real flaws in how D&D does its economy. It's very easy to make resources, and very, very expensive to sell them. Now, 4 years later, I've learned a lot more about running an economy, and honestly, I've chosen just not to in most of my campaigns. Now, when I'm referring to an economy, I'm talking more about a gold economy. There's other kinds of economies, and I feel like some of them fit the fantasy setting a little bit better, but gold economies in D&D take a lot of finicking to actually get them to work well, because you can make a plate mail incredibly easy, and it sells for a lot of gold. Because of that, your players can kind of abuse this to make infinite gold as long as they have smithing tools. There's all kinds of different strong effects like this in D&D, and if you go onto TikTok or Instagram, I'm sure that you'll be welcomed by a full slew of them if you really start looking. But if you want to kind of fix this, there really isn't a great way to. The best way I've found personally in 4 years of trying to fix it is what I call the 50% off rule, which is basically supply and demand. If my players are going to sell me 6 copies of plate mail, when they go to do that again, it's going to be worth half the amount. And I think this kind of makes sense and is kind of thematic. As the shop owner buys more, he's going to struggle to offload it. So I make it worth less, but that's not even a foolproof fix. Because of that, I tend to lean more towards a turnip economy. And what a turnip economy is, well, it's the barter system. And honestly, I kind of like the barter system a little bit better in D&D because you see it in higher levels. If you go on the D&D wiki and start looking at how to run an economy, they'll go into these 3 economies. And it really leans into what the wish economy is. The other way to kind of deal with this is if you're like me and you're running a regenerating dungeon, make the monsters drop magic crystals. It's an idea you see in isekai animes a lot, and it's actually really fun. So like great examples of this would be shows like Danmachi, where they're going to drop these big magic crystals. Now, if those have a use in your world, like they can use them to make lamps, or maybe they're included in making new armors or magic items because the silk has to be run through it, that can be something that's really, really useful for your setting and is actually going to add a lot of value when your players bring them back. Those I'll tend to leave at the same value if I'm going to go with that route. I just make sure I really well define what kind of magic crystals are going to drop in my random loot table for my players. And personally, I think that that's my favorite way of doing it in a recurring dungeon, because there's no real great way to deal with monster drops otherwise. And the reason I like the wish economy is magic items are really hard to make. Because of that, you have to trade things like wish spells and other high-level magic in order to get some of these stronger and more unique magic items. With that whole situation in thought, you can actually kind of apply this to everything. And that's why I like the barter system is, yes, the players may have to give up gold in order to get certain items, and that's great for some items, but for magic items, potions, or really anything else that my players personally need, I actually make them sit down and kind of barter with the store owner of, yes, gold, but this is really hard to procure. So either I'm going to increase the price a lot to compensate based on how much gold my players have, or I'm going to make them kind of trade something else with the shop owner. And that's where I think this can get really unique, is there's a lot of ways that you can kind of adapt that mentality of trading with your players, and you can make it a little bit more fun for them. Now, don't cut out your gold economy entirely. It's a struggle to kind of keep it balanced. And what I have ended up doing as I've gotten more experience in D&D is there's just not very many things for my players to buy with gold. A lot of it they have to go and find. But there are other ways of dealing with it. And I think that's kind of what I wanted this video to be about, is how can you go outside of the box and fix your economy? Because as base rules are written, they're really easy to break. Now, if you liked this video and you found a lot of use out of it and got some ideas off of it, please consider subscribing to the channel and check out some of the other videos. I'm trying to post weekly videos here so that people can kind of get new ideas and grow their own campaigns. All right, with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.